Hi, I'm Mike Peters with China Daily, and this is Big Talk. We're talking today with the ambassador from the European Union, Dr. Markus Ederer. Dr. Ederer, hello.
Hello, and welcome to the EU delegation.
Thank you. Thank you for taking time with us today. I know you're about to celebrate Europe Day very soon. Can you tell us a little bit about that event and how it will be observed here in China?
Well, Europe Day is basically the European Union National Day. It celebrates unity and peace in Europe. Goes back to the Schuman Declaration, Robert Schuman, who in 1950 made a declaration basically calling for France and Germany pooling their coal and steel industries to create permanent peace, which was, by the way, then the building stone for the first European community, the European Coal and Steel Community. But it holds a lot of symbolism also for another reason. 9 May 1945 was the first day of peace after a devastating World War. And so for us Europeans, this day is a day when we commemorate our unity and peace in Europe.
Okay. And I know Europe is also observing the 50th anniversary of the Elysée Treaty, which I apologize to French speakers everywhere for the way I say that. Is that part of the observance this year also?
The Elysée Treaty will be very much part of the celebrations this year. We have the 50th anniversary. It was a treaty between Germany and France, signed by then French President Charles de Gaulle and Chancellor Konrad Adenauer. It effectively put an end to centuries of enmity and rivalries between two major European countries. And it was very much part of the reasoning, by the way, of the Nobel Prize Committee last year when it awarded the Nobel Peace Prize to the EU as a new beginning of European history.
Okay. When we read about the interaction between the European Union and China and European countries and China, we hear a lot about green energy. I know Europe is very diverse, but is it fair to say that green energy is the most important area of cooperation between economic interests in China and the EU?
Well, Mike, you justly say that Europe is very diverse, and diversity is something we are proud of and which is our strength. And our motto, by the way, is unity in diversity. Often we rally around a good cause. And I think environment and leaving our children a world which is worth living in is one of these causes. And so we have developed a sustainability policy and philosophy, which has made us, in fact, a green power, as you say. A green power which is leading in sustainability concepts, in green technologies of our companies. I think that our companies are indeed leading when it comes to resource and energy efficient technologies, when it comes to low carbon technology, environmentally friendly technologies. And this is something we very much share with our Chinese partners. And this is very much something which characterizes the products and services we export to China. When you think of European cars, European machine tools, European planes, even the chemical products and the food we export is all very environmentally friendly and safe for human consumption. In that conjunction, we will have a massive, what we call a mission for green growth by 2 commissioners coming in July with 60 business to share more of that with China. And that is leading up to a summit this year, EU-China summit, which I believe will very much be marked by this theme of green growth.
You're talking about the high-level visits between Europe and China, which there have been very many in the last 2 years, certainly. And Mrs. Ashton was just here last week. Can you talk a little bit about that visit?
Yeah, I think it was a very timely and early visit into the new Chinese leadership. Madam Ashton was preparing the strategic dialogue she is having with the new State Councillor Yang Jiechi, whom she met. She was preparing the summit I talked about. And I think it was very good to have this visit to connect and reconnect with the leaders. She had met most of them, Li Keqiang as in his capacity as vice premier, the former foreign minister Yang Jiechi, but there were also new leaders like the new defense minister, and we're having a number of dialogues going which have to be restarted and re-energized with the new leadership. So it was a very good visit.
China has expressed a lot of confidence in the EU's ability to extract itself from the debt crisis. What does the market have to do, or what has to happen in the EU to convince the markets to give them the same confidence that China seems to have?
Well, first of all, I would like to say that the Chinese government's confidence has been and is an important factor of restoring and keeping confidence in the euro and the eurozone. But I think most importantly, Europe has to do its homework, and we have started. We have started massively to reform the system. You see the member states engaging in budgetary discipline, restoring their competitivity. You have seen the European Central Bank saying it will do what it takes to keep the euro. We have established a European stability mechanism worth 500 billion euro in case an intervention is needed. We are moving towards a banking union. And I think with all of this, we will strengthen the system, and something will happen what nobody expects, but we know as Europeans, any crisis we had strengthened the EU, strengthened its ability to reform itself, and we came out stronger from the crisis than we went into it. And I'm convinced that the world will see this again.
As the EU moves into this big anniversary year, it's fair to say that the EU has been growing from the moment it was conceived. Has the crisis sort of taken some of the attractiveness of the idea of the EU away, and will that change its ability to grow in the future?
Well, I think we should admit that this is the biggest crisis which has hit the EU in its existence. But almost paradoxically, it has not reduced its appeal. Even here in China over the last 2 years, I saw an increased interest in the EU. And that's also understandable because we are China's biggest economic partner. And China is very much interested in having the euro. But when you also look at the EU itself, we will welcome Croatia as a 28th member state in July. When you look at the Eurozone, we have Latvia asking for entry. We have Lithuania announcing it wants to enter the Eurozone in 2015. We have Poland announcing a referendum on entering the Eurozone. I think that demonstrates the attractiveness of the EU. And let me add one thing. Last week, Cathy Ashton, the High Representative for Security Policy and Foreign Affairs, brokered a deal between Serbia and Kosovo over long-standing dispute, ultimately because both countries wanted to have a perspective to enter into the EU. And I think that proves that the EU's appeal has not suffered. But of course, we have to overcome the crisis and remain the attractive supranational organization and the biggest peace project we have created.
Okay. One of the ways that the EU is bolstering some trade with China is encouraging more tourism. Can you talk a little bit about the efforts to kind of create a standard visa process for Chinese going to Europe?
Let me say at the outset that we welcome Chinese tourism. We welcome to have as many Chinese travelers to Europe, be they students, researchers, tourists, businessmen and women. And we have been very active in trying to improve the visa facilitation. China was the first country where we created a common Schengen visa procedure, first country globally. We have worked hard to create visa centers outside the embassies and the consulates. which would increase the capacities to give visas. If you only look at our website, we have an interactive visa information dialogue going on. We also invite Chinese citizens to participate in a review of the Schengen policy. As a Chinese citizen, you can actually voice your opinion on how to improve the Schengen policy. And that has led last year to an increase of 18% more visas given to Chinese. And by the way, 50% more individual visas. And we are working very hard to have that increase every year because, as I said, we want to invite Chinese citizens to come to Europe.
Very good. How long have you been in China yourself?
I've been here now for 2.5 years. It seems much shorter for me subjectively because time is flying by. And it has to do a lot with the dynamism of China, its society and its people. And with some sadness, I'm already looking forward to end of 2014 when I have to leave because I will miss the place. It holds a lot of fond memories.
And how is your Chinese?
My Chinese could be better. I am struggling.
Yeah.
I have survival Chinese.
You have survival Chinese. Okay. Can you talk a little bit about what you might have seen as your most difficult challenge as the EU ambassador, and also tell us what your best moment has been here?
I would say that professionally, my best experience has been that we were able to strengthen and broaden the foundation for the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, which, by the way, celebrates its 10th anniversary this year. Who 2 years ago would have imagined that we have a partnership for sustainable urbanization? Who could have imagined that we have an EU-China water platform? Who would have imagined that we engage in dialogues on cyber issues, defense and security? And these are all issues which challenge our developments individually, jointly, but also globally. And these are important issues where we owe the next generation that we find good solutions for them. So I think that's maybe the biggest achievement I have seen over the last 2 years. My biggest challenge, you already referred to it, is Zhongwen. I came here with the ambition to be more proficient. I, in some way, failed. I arrived at what I call survival level. But I keep the ambition maybe for quite a time in my life to re-engage on the Chinese language.
We have time.
We have some time.
There are many expatriates who come to China, and if they come unattached, they often find themselves in a relationship with a nice Chinese partner and often settle down here. You came a long way to China to settle down with a nice German lady.
You're right, Mike. But I should say that I came here already quite attached to that German lady. And almost 10 years into our relationship, we decided to tie the knot in China, in a beautiful Chinese setting below the Great Wall, with all our friends and relatives. And I think that is also why China will always occupy a romantic niche in our hearts.
Yeah. That must have been a great day.
It was a wonderful day.
A great party.
Great party, and it was spiced by my Bavarian relatives coming in dirndls and lederhosen, which raised a lot of attention when the whole group went up on the Great Wall. I think the Chinese were almost as amazed about how we looked as the European guests were amazed about the great edifice of the Great Wall.
You made a real cross-cultural event out of it, though. I think besides having your family there in lederhosen, there was a lot of traditional Chinese pageantry.
It's true. We built in quite a few Chinese elements into the ceremony. We had a lion dance, we had a change faces, and it was, as I said, a nice Chinese setting. We didn't go overboard because, after all, we're not Chinese, but I think both the Chinese onlookers and the European guests liked it.
Very good. How much of the country have you been able to see since you've been here in China?
Well, I've traveled quite a bit professionally. I visit provinces. I have been to the west. I have been to Tibet. I've, of course, gone to the southern cities. But unfortunately, there's often very little time to enjoy the beauty of the place, the cities, the culture, and the landscape. When I have some free time here, I like hiking, biking, and skiing, and that's what I do amply around Beijing on weekends. But my wife and I have a plan to do some hiking in Xinjiang this summer.
One last question for you. Having been here for a couple of years and had a lot of interaction with many Chinese people at all different levels of society, what's important for you that Chinese people know about Europe?
I think I would like as many Chinese as possible to experience in Europe, coming to Europe, our diversity of peoples, cultures, languages, landscapes. I would like them to also understand better our value system of democracy, individual freedom, solidarity, human rights. And I would like China to understand that the European Union holds a promise and an offer for China. And that is when it comes to building global peace, social development, and democracy, when it comes to major powers relations, the EU is China's best partner.
Very good. Thank you, sir, very much for spending some time with us this morning.
Thank you, Mike.